Welcome back to another episode of the How To Home Podcast. My name's Aaron Massey, joined alongside Tracy Pendergast. And today we've got Patrick Cain from Patrick Cain Designs, and we are chatting about some custom furniture. You're gonna outfit your home with some custom furniture? This is the guy to do it. You get confused for the hockey player Patrick Cain a lot?
I was in Chicago the day that he punched his cab driver with a reporting pass with ESPN, and people thought that I was messing with him the whole time. And I'm like, no, this is my name.
Different spelling.
Different spelling.
Yeah. So we're going to dive into some questions. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on how you got here?
So I took the least direct path you can to get to having a furniture line. I started off in college as a nuclear materials engineer working at Los Alamos National Laboratory. And it just wasn't for me because I remember at the time I would get home from work or get back to the trailer I was living with in the trailer I was living in New Mexico, and my girlfriend and my mother would call me like, "Oh, how's work today?" And I'd be like, "Classified." And like that kills the conversation. Like when, "How's your day?" Classified. Like is the dialogue, it's going nowhere. And so after that I went back to school. Not back to, I mean, the summer ended, go back to my next year in college, maybe in my third year. And I was like, I just kind of want to take a class in journalism because I wanted to kind of stretch my brain a little bit, left brain, right brain balance. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Took off, covered the '06 elections in Ohio, which for the political junkies out there, they know it's such an important state. So I had amazing opportunities. And eventually I moved out to Los Angeles to cover the stock market, oddly, for a national newspaper. And at that time, around that time, I wanted to start kind of building a home, but a journalist's salary doesn't get you far. It definitely doesn't get you nice furniture. So eventually at one point I was sanding a piece of wood for a stepping stone that I was going to use as a stepping stone as I walk up to my building. And I was dating a girl who, true story, just had like multiple personality disorder, and I didn't know it. So she would tell these stories, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. But a little like mantra I had at the time is, or looking back on the time is, 2 + 2 can equal giraffe if you're in love. So I'd make her stories work, and I would do that while sanding this live edge disc of wood that I was going to use as a stepping stone. And by the time I realized, oh my God, this is just one-way ticket to Crazy Train. Well, on the Crazy Train, I asked a guy I met at a party months before, like, "Hey, what do you think of this?" And he's like, "Looks like a table to me. I'd put some hairpin legs on it." I was like, I agree. I completely agree. So I go home and I Google hairpin legs. So I don't know what that means at the time. And for those at home don't know what that means, it's fine. It's just the V-shaped little thin metal legs that you see on a lot of side tables. And I made a table. My best friend at the time, who I met while I was writing for ESPN, he was my photographer on a story, and we became good friends. He took a picture of it. I didn't know what to do with this beautiful picture and this beautiful table, but I knew I had 10 other pieces of wood that I was going to use as stepping stones, and I saw them all as potential tables. I put it on Craigslist because that's how I thought you sell things. Craigslist is not how you sell things.
It's how you get abducted.
Yes. But I sold it, and I was like, oh my God, if I sell 2 of these, I'll be in the black. It'll cover my orbital sander, it'll cover my belt sander, and it'll cover $5 an hour of my time. I have very high value of my time. And I sold 2 of them, and then slowly but surely, it just like kept adding, like one after another. It became like, initially it was you'd order it and I'd make it. And then I'd started carrying a line, and I started expanding the line. And it just really happened organically. I wish there was a quick and easy answer to how did I become a furniture designer. There isn't. It was just all of a sudden I was a furniture designer because of really organic baby steps.
Wow. How did you have the skills that you like?
Oh, I didn't.
Okay.
don't fool yourself. I didn't.
Okay. So how did you learn?
My landlord at the time, who I lived next to, who was like my West Coast father, was a master craftsman. He built houses here in LA. He was a master electrician in Chicago. And I'd go to him with questions. And he'd slap me around and make fun of me. But in the process, I would learn how to do things. And between him and the reality that in America, we have a generation of aging master craftsmen whose father, most likely, but maybe mother, was also a master craftsman, whose grandparents were also a master craftsman. But this generation isn't taking it up. There's these adults nearing retirement who do not have an heir apparent, and they're everywhere. And all they want to do is tell you how to do things right.
Right.
And I was more than willing to listen. And I think that actually goes into being a journalist, is being willing to ask a stupid question and hear out the answer is really valuable. And throughout even still today, not knowing how to do something is just as valuable as coming in with skill sets. In fact, most of the people I hire at my company don't know how to do anything. They just want to work and they have a creative eye.
So it's more about staying interested for you. That's like kind of been where a lot of your inspiration comes from, just staying interested, learning, like.
It's keeping your eyes open for things you like and having a curiosity of how does that get done. And once you know how to make that, then tweak it a little to make something new that's not being done and have your own little like fingerprint on it.
Yeah, so how would you define, I guess, the style of stuff that you do as it kind of has evolved? I mean, if you look at some of the stuff that you've done, a lot of it is kind of minimal materials or like...
So we started mid-century modern with the live edge tables, the hairpin legs, which is a good place to start because mid-century modern will probably forever sell. But I really quickly found myself getting into like a minimalist contemporary vibe of like just living a very idealized life where you don't have clutter and stuff. Because that's how I would like to live, even though I have a ton of clutter and I have a ton of stuff. But recently, we have taken almost an opposite approach, and it's a brutalist vibe and a little touch of Memphis. So just definitions here. Memphis is a design style started in the early 80s in Italy, best known or best described as Pee Wee Herman or Saved by the Bell. We're talking wild zigzag colors and like bulbous shapes and like things that are just kind of ridiculous. Brutalism is a 70s, 80s, maybe a little 60s too style that was big, concrete, almost like the style itself, at least to me, maybe this is what it is. I'm not a design expert, but the style itself was kind of a Soviet Union inspired scare. Like the Soviets are coming. So like you build these giant concrete buildings, which were both aesthetically beautiful, but also really impending. So our furniture line right now is big monolithic concrete items with a soft Memphis-y touch. So that's where we've evolved, and where we're going next, who knows?
That's cool.
So tell us about your company. So how many people do you have how many guys do you have working for you?
I'm going to correct you right there. Guys right now, 1. Women, 4. I realized, actually, those numbers might be off. We'll go over that. I realized the other day, and I'm very proud to acknowledge this, that if you include my therapist and my girlfriend as part of Team PCD represents all 6 inhabitable continents in the world.
Wow.
So we have me and my shop leader, Jen, then Nasli, then there's Lizzie, Handy, Frankie J. Yeah, that's the team. So it's one guy working, 1 guy intern, 2 women working, 1 female intern.
And what's kind of the workflow in your shop? Is it collaborative with
Very
design?
collaborative. So being that I don't come from a design background or even a like craftsy background, like I didn't own a tool until 6 years ago. And that's not because I knew how to use tools and I'd go use somebody else's shop. I didn't know how to use tools 6 years ago, pretty much. I want everyone in the shop to be able to do a little of everything. And once we figure out what you're good at, you'll kind of like work your way in there. But it's really collaborative where every single day I tell people, remind me, if you see something you like, let me know. In fact, just recently, Jen and I were debating on this new color pattern we're using on our concrete monoliths. I was like, I just don't think these colors work. They're too close. And she's like, no, I love that they're so close. So we did a few tests, and she's right. Like, once we did a few tests, I was like, no, I'm on your side now. This is what we're doing, and it's going to create a whole new series. We're in the shop, we're calling it colorblinds, because you're like, is that two colors? I can't really, it's kind of like messes with your eyes. And I love it.
Are you hiring? Because we just that sounds like you're a really amazing boss. And I don't even know if you probably like the word boss from what it sounds like.
What's your shop like? What's a day in the life of the shop like? You know, like how's the whole thing operate?
I really wish there was more of a normalized flow, and I think that's one of the goals for the year. But the problem is every week is so different. So right now I have one or two people making big concrete monoliths, another person and me probably working on packing because we have 3 or 4 large projects ready to ship in the next 2 weeks. And whenever there's downtime, because there's always downtime with concrete, I'm stressing cleaning because I'm a mess. So there's not too much of a flow right now, but that's probably where I'm most valuable in my own company, is like seeing the big picture and like, okay, if we organize everything this way, we can maximize a day. And then I leave a lot of the flow to my shop manager, Jen.
How did you get into concrete?
I just always kind of like that look of, I call it, the Lowe's or Home Depot floors of like that shiny concrete. Lowe's more than Home Depot. And it was just trying until we learned all the tricks and trades of the trade, and we're still learning them today.
What's your favorite material to work with?
Oh, it's definitely concrete.
Concrete?
It's just so, I love welding. We don't do too much of it anymore, but welding is really empowering. When you're melting two metals together, you kind of feel like a superhero.
Yeah.
But concrete, you can do so much with it that is so contrary to what people think the material is.
What's the shipping like on
It's hellish.
Like, what do you, is everything shipped, what's it called?
Assembled.
Put together, assembled?
So there are some pieces. So a new line, monoliths, the name implies it's just one big piece. So there's one big piece. But tables, sometimes the top and the bottom separate. Mm-hmm. But if you order an 8-foot by 4-foot dining table that's concrete top, you're going to get an 8-foot by 4-foot piece of concrete. So like the shipping's a lot one way or another. It's a constant debate of how you handle shipping. Do you absorb the cost and make the price sky high, or do you make people think they're going to buy a table till checkout and then they see shipping's $800 to New York?
Right.
So right now we're kind of absorbing most of the costs, constantly looking for ways to get it to be less.
Would you consider opening a shop on another coast, possibly?
Absolutely. I'm already looking at an East Coast location.
Who's your client base? Like, who do you get approached by most often? Is it homeowners, businesses?
Yeah, so right now we're transitioning from direct-to-consumer to more business-to-business. That is like interior designers. But I have a large presence on Etsy, which a lot of people think, why would you be on Etsy? But the reality with concrete is you have a lot of go-backs. You have a lot of imperfect pieces that I cannot risk to ship to New York at full price. And then someone says, but it's not perfect. And then I have to ship it back. So I sell my second hands on Etsy, which has gotten me a really good client base. And also I sell at the Rose Bowl Flea Market still.
I love that flea market.
People never think they'd find me there because the Rose Bowl Flea Market, if you've got furniture, it's either like rusty metal or like barnwood, which are two things I just don't touch. And then all of a sudden you turn the corner and you have this like totally clean, minimalist design, and they're like, what are you doing here? But I I've designed pieces for the Soho House because I met the Soho House designer at the Rose Bowl. Like,
That's awesome. It's a great networking spot too.
I mean, there's a hotelier who buys my stuff. She's designed 9,000 hotels. I met her at the Rose Bowl. So it's also a great way to get rid of secondhand things.
Yeah, that's a great tip because I know we have a lot of makers that listen to the show. And I think, like, a lot of people want to know, like, once you start making things as your job, does some of the fun go away? Like, is it hard? Do you still enjoy it?
Oh, no, there's absolutely a loss of fun when it becomes your job. I mean, everyone always says, do what you love. I disagree with that. I say, do what you like. Save what you love for a hobby. Because when you depend on it, it's inherently going to have some push and pull tension.
Right.
I mean, I like this stuff. In all reality, I like the management part of the business more than I like the making part of it. So that's why I find people are really good at making things. Like, I grew up with strategy games, Risk, Civilization. Now it would be like Settlers of Catan, resource management games, which is all a business is. You have a certain amount of time, money, employees. How do you get the job done with those limited resources? It's a really nerdy way to look at running a business, but
it's a really good way to look at it.
I mean, I think a lot of maker types in general struggle with the business side of things because they like the making side of things so much that they're like, I love doing this, I love building stuff, but the business side of things I don't really get. And so
my neighbor in the warehouse that I run, his business is Objects for Objects, little shout out, Leonard, is great at making, hates the business side. And we always joke that, like, we're the exact reciprocal of each other in terms of, like, where our skills lie. But it's great to have somebody next door who you can ask the question of, like, what colors are you liking right now? Or, hey, how do you make this website more business friendly? Like, for him to ask me, things like that. It's great to surround yourself with people who can help you with your weaknesses.
Yeah, I have an Etsy shop, and I really love running the shop from home. When I have to go out to, like, a craft fair situation to actually sell, it's like my actual worst nightmare. I just want to be like, when people ask how much it is, I just want them to be like, you can just have it. Just take it. Like, I hate talking money and prices.
Try now selling a high-end product at a flea market.
Yeah.
It's the looks I get are just priceless.
They're like clutching their little like antique
And I'm like,
pearls.
No, honey, that's wholesale I just offered you. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, yeah.
Well, let's talk
make
about
it yourself.
that. What kind of is a price point on some of your stuff? Like, what would a concrete table, like, what's kind of a price range?
Like dining tables, we probably aren't even starting the conversation below $2,000. Side tables, they're going to probably start around $300. But concrete has rejects. So right now we have my two favorite products are called the Manza pedestal. It's just a cylinder, and the Cloud monolith, which is
those are really cool. It's
thank you. Wavy, yeah. I made that not even knowing what the style was called, which is called a scalloped edge. We made probably 40 or 50 of those before we figured out how to do it. So right now I have like 10 left of rejects, which online they're $800-900 a pop or something around there. Come to the flea market, you can get them for $300, and it's like the flaws are pretty much only seen by me.
Right.
But again, I can't risk shipping it to New York.
Right, and absorbing that cost and then getting it shipped back.
Exactly.
Absorbing that cost.
And then shipping it again. So, how do you price things? It's how hungry are you? Like, how desperate are you, I guess. There have been months where I'm just like, just take it. I've also just given deals to people because, like, so last weekend was the flea market. And at the end of the day, I wanted to pack up. There's two young girls, just moved to LA from the state of Washington. And I'm like, I've been in their shoes. They're probably like 24. And I'm like, I just want you to have something good. And I gave them such a good deal. And it's like, I'm giving you this deal so that you buy less at IKEA.
Yeah.
That's what, like, I'm not making money on this, but I want less bought at IKEA because I want less in the landfill. Because that's where your IKEA side table is going to be in a year.
Yeah. So what do you recommend people look for when they're buying furniture? Like, what are some things, just on a craftsmanship level that you recommend? Because I don't think most people would think that about IKEA, the fact that it's going to basically turn to waste.
I mean, if it has a particle board core, you basically, it's just not going to hold up long term, right?
Pretty much. That's like, if it's MDF or particle board as the wood, and it's just a veneer wood, but like, how do you train someone to see what a veneer looks like? That's tough. Heavier the better, I guess, would be a good rule of thumb. If you're picking it up, you're like, oh, it's so light. That's because it's made from spray painted cardboard, pretty much.
Yeah. And that's why it's in my kids' rooms.
Yeah.
There's a time and place for IKEA, for sure. I think the playroom is one of them.
And you know what? I think their kitchenware is fantastic.
Oh, yes. Their jars and their storage containers.
Those are materials like you can't really,
glass and
silverware, stuff like that. You're not going to cut that open and find cardboard boxes.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think IKEA is
I love their some of their design stuff.
Fantastic.
From a design function or perspective.
Yeah.
Is incredible.
No, I have. So at the flea market, I bring out this reading chair that I designed and had built. And then I also have just 2 vintage IKEA chairs. Every month someone tries to buy those chairs. And I'm just like...
I bet that really pisses you off.
You know what? I'm not going to look down on IKEA for being great, for hiring great designers. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to look down on them for being so disposable.
Right.
Because even though they do use a lot of recycled materials, one thing I harp on is that recycling is reduce, reuse, recycle. Those are the 3 R's. They're reusing materials, but they're not reducing materials. And would you rather a side table that is made from reused goods that lasts 1 year, or a side table that's going to last you 20 years? If you do the math, that one using new materials that last longer is more environmentally friendly.
Yeah, and you have a big stress on sustainability in your shop. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I was a kid of the 80s, so it was indoctrinated. I was a kid in the 80s in New York, raised by parents who were they were hippies. My mom treated Abby Hoffman's head wounds in a protest, and they are diehard hippies. Now a state worker and nurse, but it's just ingrained in me to be environmentally friendly. So whether it's the wood we use for our live edge pieces come from trees that naturally fell in LA. So we literally will stop when we see a tree being cut down by the city or by whoever the city contracts out and be like, what are you doing with that? So for a while we had wood from the LA Zoo because there was a big wood storm, or the Huntington Gardens because there was a big windstorm 5 years ago. In our concrete, we're using recycled styrofoam. So concrete by nature is cement in an aggregate. Usually that's sand or stone. There's a company that can coat 99% recycled post-consumer styrofoam so that it bonds with cement. Wow. It's not as strong, but you can pick and choose where you use it. So all my monoliths are hollowed out and made out of recycled styrofoam, because if you have a weaker material that's 18 inches tall, you're not going to break through 18 inches of concrete. If you had a weaker material and you're only 3/4 inch thick, then you're going to run into trouble.
And it keeps the weight down too, right?
Massively.
Which will help in your shipping costs and some other stuff.
It helps my back.
Helps your back, yeah.
Doing a flea market where you are selling concrete gets a little exhausting.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't
You're
even.
I can imagine at the end of the day, you'd be like, yeah, you can take that if you can put it in the back of your truck, because I don't want to move it for the 15th time.
My
I
ex
feel
would
that way
always
with
joke.
t-shirts.
She was just like, why don't you sell silk scarves? And I'm like, I really should.
That's so funny. Yeah. And these people that go to the flea markets, they're hardcore. They set up and break down twice a week, 3 times a week. And
I do once a month, and my body can't handle it
that's
anymore.
enough. Yeah.
That's a whole nother business, that whole flea market thing. And just the flea market shopper, I think, is a specific type of client too.
But you know what it is? It's also, from a business perspective, virtually free A/B testing. In that I know whether or not I'm doing something right by who's coming out and talking to me about it. Or I know how I present something, if it's the right way, by who's stopping. If it's all, no offense to my parents, people like my parents, then I might not have a winner. If it keeps on being people in like the 25 to 45-year-old demographic who are lead creatives at their ad agency, then it's like, okay, we got something here. And it's a great way to test an idea out.
Speaking to that, like, what are some of your, or what is like some of your better performing things? Is it the cloud things like you were talking about?
So the pedestals right now are probably the top performer. It's colorful. It's easy to relate to because it's just a pedestal. The cloud is the best performer to my highest end clients. Like, I have a few designers who I go to in terms of like, what do you think? How do you feel on this one? And everyone's just like, that. I love that. You need to do more of that. The cloud is more, I mean, the Manza pedestal is easier for people to swallow. Other things are that my round concrete tables called the Ross. People love those. Those are probably the other top performer.
Named for friends?
Yeah, this one's named after my buddy Sean Ross, who is a very famous albino model. The Manza's named after my shop right hand, who has since moved on, Juan Manza. And the cloud is just because it's kind of the juxtaposition of it being so heavy looking, but light in weight and kind of curvy like a cloud. There's a lot going on that one.
Yeah, looking down, like if you're looking at it from the top, it looks
kind
like
of cloudy,
like a cartoony cloud kind of.
What does your own home look like?
It's super minimal. I did a concrete, so I own the building I live in. So I ripped up the floors, I did a concrete veneer, then an epoxy coat on top of it. So it's kind of, it has a really shiny concrete look without actually being a real concrete floor. Concrete counters that we made, open cabinetry. I believe in open cabinetry because you can't hide things.
And that's
Aaron,
why
it scares
that's
Aaron.
why I can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a concrete coffee table, a couch that we made. It's pretty minimal, but it's also usually a mess because there's 2 dogs in the house and 2 boys in the house. So
Yeah, that's actually was one of the questions we got on social media, whose dogs those were that you use a lot in the photos.
they're everybody's.
Yeah.
So there are puppies in photos. Mm-hmm. Those are from Angel City Pit Bulls. Angel City Pit Bull, ACPB, is a LA-based foster agency for pit bulls who I was a foster dad for and still like help out here and there for.
Pit bulls are the best.
They
I have
are.
one too.
They're so sweet.
I have one too.
Aaron has one too.
Yeah.
Mine,
So
I rescued mine from a place down in the South Bay, but another pit bull rescue.
there's no shortage of pit bulls that need to be rescued in Los Angeles. Yeah. So there's them. Other ones were my the girl who used to run my social media. Her dogs got in there a lot. I think my photographer's dogs have gotten in there. Mm-hmm. Always looking for dogs.
Well, we happen to know 2 very good dog models.
Fantastic.
If you ever need
I have a very photogenic pit bull.
I've even had
if his head can fit in
her head.
Her head. I'm sorry.
If her head fits in the
dainty
frame.
I even have had chickens and turtles in photos.
I love that.
Anything quirky.
Going back to, I guess, the business side of things, like what is the biggest challenges that you've faced in kind of, this wasn't what you started out doing, so learning all the business side of things.
Oh, I mean, the biggest challenge, one massive challenge, and I hate admitting it because I'm a diehard liberal, but like Los Angeles doesn't make it easy to run a business. Like whether it's all the paperwork I don't know that I'm supposed to be doing or simply the cost of doing business. The rent here is so darn high. That's tough. Being able to pay yourself is something I still haven't really even figured out. Like, because everything I make goes to my employees and gets reinvested. So it's just like having steady business is a tough one. And I think it's a waiting game. And I'm at the point now where like I have enough irons in the fire that there's usually at least one designer who's hitting me up for something. So there's always something to be done. Another business challenge is finding employees. First 4 months of this year, I struggled. it was one person had another job elsewhere, another person got in a car accident, another person just was MIA. And finding reliable people is so difficult.
Yeah, I think
And
that's...
you're trying to hire people of a certain skill set, right? Or
I'll train anyone. So every person I train, I remind them that last year, one of my employees was a girl who was deaf who had never used tools. If I can train a girl who's deaf how to do this, I can train you. I mean, I know some sign language, that helps, but still, with concrete, there's actually a really big auditory element to it. When we're spraying the concrete, it's supposed to sound a certain way, and if it doesn't, then you have something wrong in your mix. So we'll teach anyone. I think one difficult thing is language barriers, whether it's being deaf or not speaking English because you're Spanish speaking or whatever it is. Like communicating the actually pretty complex ideas that go into concrete with limited language abilities has been one of my bigger challenges.
Yeah. And why do you think there's a lack of younger people interested in trades and craftsmanship?
Because working in tech pays a lot better.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks they're entitled to a 6-figure job making video games or whatever it is, and it's just not the case. So we also aren't training. I grew up with a shop class. I don't know if high schools still have shop classes. I'm going to guess many don't.
We had an electrician on the show, and he was talking about the same thing, that the average age of electricians now are what he was
55.
saying. 55, and there's just not up and coming tradespeople anymore.
And what's ironic is it's the trades jobs which are the hardest for AI to replace. Mm-hmm. It's not complicated jobs. Complicated jobs that take a lot of intellectual processing are the easiest for machines to replace, because no matter how smart you are, that computer can process a lot quicker than you can. But it's getting under a sink and be like, okay, we need to get the J-trap out because there's a leak. You're not going to have a robot anytime soon that's crawling under your sink and replacing your pipes. So trades are the safest place to be, and they're actually really good money. They're just
especially now. And the more scarce they become, the more in demand they become, which then drives up the value of that trade. So then you can make more and more money on top of that. So yeah, we've talked about that a few times, and kind of the skills gap and kind of incentivizing people to get their hands dirty, or at least have some, my whole brand is based on people being able to tackle a lot of stuff around the house, because for that very reason, it's hard to find somebody even now. You might call and say, I need a plumber. That plumber may not call you back for 3 or 4 weeks, because they're just busy.
There's a lot of people who you can also turn to that they don't work in your field, but their knowledge is super applicable. So right now, to do my new line, the clouds and the Manza pedestals, the concrete monoliths, it's a completely different process than I used to work with. Before, they used to be just like melamine or wood forms or rubber forms, but now it's a rubber and fiberglass matrix mold, which is a lot of work, which I have done it, but if you don't have to work with fiberglass for a living, don't work with fiberglass for a living. It sucks. So the guy I go to, his day job is making monsters. In LA, we have so many talented people because of the Hollywood industry. Mm-hmm. And he makes monsters for movies. You walk in his shop and there's like a werewolf, Ninja Turtles, like zombies. And he's just making props all day. And at night, he'll make molds for me. So by day right now, he is fixing the original jaws that I think hangs at like the Screen Actor Guilds off their ceiling. And he's been like reworking its skin to look more like it was when it was originally made. And at night, he makes fiberglass molds for me. So being able to think about who can help you, who doesn't think they could help you. Like every time he does a new mold, he's just like, this is so fun. I never thought I'd make furniture. And I'm like, me and you both.
That is so cool.
And you spray a lot of your concrete, right?
So
As
yeah,
opposed to
it's a
pouring
face
it.
coat. It's about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch that's being sprayed out of a kind of like a plaster hopper gun. And then we, depending on what the application is, we're packing it, or there's actually a $13,000 gun that sprays a thicker concrete layer that you can do, but you don't need it. And we're just like building it up. My newest employee, Nasli, her mother was a baker. And she's like, this is so much like baking. Like, it's constant baking analogies. And she's right. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you look at it, it's an ingredient thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's either a chemical process or a heat process or something that's
When I'm
added
mixing
to the
colors,
ingredients.
I mix it with a KitchenAid mixer.
Yeah.
So, and
That's interesting.
when we are doing patching, we're using like scrapers that you would do frosting with. Just because it's a softer material, softer scraper that won't scratch the concrete and still is like filling in holes.
So we talked about a little bit of the challenges from the business side of things. Obviously, you're in business for yourself. What is the most rewarding part of having your own business?
I really it sounds so silly, but having a happy customer is so rewarding. Unfortunately, having an unhappy customer is really tough for me to swallow. And there's been a couple. Mm-hmm. But making somebody happy is really worth it for me.
Yeah, and every time you get one of those reviews on Etsy, you just kind of like
Yeah.
wiggle in your seat a little bit. That's so cool. Where do you see your business going, or how do you see your life expanding?
I think the next big phase is hiring proper sales rep teams, and I have 2 in the works. I have a sales rep in France, but that's limited because shipping. Once we have the sales reps up and going, there's a guy in the Santa Barbara area who does something similar to what I do, and he and I were talking. He's like, once you get a sales rep, be ready. We went from 3 to 25 people, like overnight practically. So it's kind of right now making sure we're ready to take that jump, because the worst thing you can do is leave a bad impression and burn a bridge.
Right, because you're not prepared.
Yeah, because you're scaling too quickly and then you can't execute and
Absolutely.
demand and all that.
Whether it's just having enough people, having enough space, having enough inventory of like the products I need, like there's a lot that goes into scaling up, and we're getting there slowly.
So for someone that's really into making furniture, just kind of maybe they have a normal job,
Yep.
and they do it on the side, but would love to actually start a business and take that plunge, what advice could you give to them?
I would say focus on a product that is safe. Get nearly passive income in that, like, whether for me it was live edge side tables. Those are easy, they're quick, there's always gonna be somebody looking for them, that you can just churn those out in the background or have somebody else. Because as soon as you have a product that is reliable, you can have somebody else doing that while you're developing the next thing. And that person is paying for themselves and for you to help develop the next thing. So right now we have a restaurant job that is probably safe for the next 18 months of nonstop work, doing pretty much the same 1 or 2 or 3 things over and over and over. So we were able to bring on 2 people.
Are you doing like tables for the restaurant? Or?
We're doing tables, but also, and more so, is concrete wall panels.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be really beautiful.
Okay, so we got some social media questions for you. These are always our favorite.
Yep.
Okay, what is your studio and workspace like? Do you have music in the background? What's your go-to soundtrack or vibe?
Oh my God, my go-to soundtrack is not my soundtrack. It matters who's working. If Frankie J works, Frankie is this El Salvadorian workhorse. It's a mix of mariachi and Michael Bolton.
Classic.
Yeah.
You got to even it out. You got to.
And he belts it out while he works. If it's Jen and Nasli, it's much more contemporary. It's usually just a radio station. And we found out that whatever radio station the wave is only plays about 100 to 200 different songs because every single day we're like, oh, it's Whitney time. Like, it's shocking how much these songs come on. So
that's not even, I mean, I feel like that's a, isn't it top 40? Like every station I'm on is like, I get in the car, I'll go somewhere. I'll get back in the car after I'm at that place. The same song is playing again.
You've looped back
it's
around.
Like, you looped back through.
I don't get a choice. If I have the choice, I have headphones on and I'm listening to New York Times The Daily or the Washington Post most.
Yeah.
I want to know a little bit more about this classified thing, obviously, that you can't tell me about. More about how'd you get involved in that field?
So I was a materials engineer at Ohio State, and they were doing interviews. They being Los Alamos National Laboratory were doing interviews on campus. I went purely as a interview practice. So I was like, no way am I getting this job. This goes to a kid at MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, one of the powerhouses. And we're a powerhouse, but we're not like the powerhouse. And through persistence, I got the job. I mean, I just emailed or called the hiring manager every month. Like, hey, just wanted to see, I heard that the government's budget was signed last week. I wanted to know if that gave you any clarity on your intern situation this month. And I think purely out of persistence, I got a job working in the nuclear materials division. And it was one of the coolest summers because not many people get to have been on the inside, get to carry radioactive elements. Like it was a fun, sometimes tedious summer.
How has that experience contributed to what you do now?
I have a working relationship with the editor at Dwell Magazine because the first time I went to Dwell and Design, which is a trade show that they have in LA, I went with a press pass for a Fast Company who I was writing for. And I was there looking for stories, but I made sure I hunted her down, and I gave her my business card. I was like, hey, I'm a journalist. I'm here with Fast Company, but I'm going to be probably the only nuclear materials engineer turned furniture designer you meet today. Here's my card. Let's follow up with each other later. 2 years later, she sees me. Oh, Patrick, you're the only nuclear materials engineer turned furniture designer that I met that day, aren't you? I was like, sure I am. So like, it's a catchy thing to use in a pitch, I guess. Mm-hmm. The engineering, on the other hand, being able to think about the concrete specifically from a microscopic level really helps because concrete's a ceramic. Ceramics are one of the major things you learn about in materials engineering. You're
so multi-talented because like a lot of people are like, oh, I'm very right-brained or I'm very left-brained. But I see you using both sides like in perfect harmony. And it's really impressive.
Thank you.
My wife and I just got turned on to the Chernobyl show on HBO recently.
I want to watch it.
And I've been watching it. And like I spent like 2 hours the other night convincing myself that I was like a DIY nuclear physicist because I've read all of Wikipedia about nuclear fission. So I'm like, oh, I'm all about it. Let's talk about nuclear energy and all sorts of stuff. But it is a good show.
There's a good fission story in the Times about a week ago about teams of researchers who have not given up on fission as the next unstoppable energy source.
Yeah.
And they're going for it. And like slowly but surely they think they're getting closer, which would be a game changer in the world.
What is that for someone like me that has no idea what you're talking about?
Being able to harvest
fission or fusion? Which one?
Whatever you just said.
What these researchers are doing are they're trying to harvest the energy of splitting the atom for like non-atomic uses. Like in the 80s, we had a brief moment. It was pretty much, it was bad science or a research paper that lied, which said we have made a fusion or fission reactor. I always use the words wrong these days. And it's going to be commercially available, and like the world stopped. Like, oh my God, our energy needs are solved forever. And it turned out it wasn't real. And people have been chasing it ever since. New York Times had the piece, I think.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, so fission is how a nuclear reactor works, which is you're splitting basically uranium atoms, and then it turns into a chain reaction. It splits more and more and more and more and more, and then
And these guys are doing cold fusion. I think that's
and then
what they're-
fusion is the other way, like bringing atoms together, kind of thing. But that doesn't exist. That's more of a
Yeah.
a theoretical.
That's what they're trying to
Fission
do.
actually exists. That's how Chernobyl happened.
And 3 Mile Island and
Okay.
The Japanese.
Japanese one.
Okay. Thank you. Learn something new
See?
every day.
Look at that. Furniture turned nuclear engineering conversation.
Oh, man.
Things I didn't think I was going to do today. Talk about nuclear fission. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you.
Hope
It was
you enjoyed
such
it.
a pleasure.
And I hope the audience doesn't hate me for messing up my Fusion Fission Awards too much. Because
No.
I'm
and
pretty
I
sure
will be visiting
you're
you at
the
the
most
flea market.
talented of all our audience when it comes to nuclear energy. We want to thank FilterBuy for making this show and this episode possible. So make sure you guys check out filterbuy.com and sign up for your HVAC filters, and also sign up for our email list. We're posting new content on the website all the time, so you never want to miss out. And follow us on social media as well, at howtohome_guide. And where can people find Patrick Cain info?
So on Instagram and Facebook, it's Patrick Cain Designs. Cain is Cain, designs with an S. Or just go straight to my website, patrickcaindesigns.com. Or you could also come to the Rose Bowl Flea Market
Yeah.
if you're local.
I'm
in
going to
LA.
come look for you next time. It's
can't
one of my
miss me.
Yeah,
It's a
favorite
great
places.
spot.
Pop in and say hi. Well, thank you guys so much for watching or listening. Be sure to rate us on your podcast app of choice. We would appreciate it.
The How To Home podcast is brought to you by FilterBuy.com, your one-stop direct-to-consumer replacement air filter brand, and is produced in collaboration by Amassed Media Group LLC and Intelligent Arts and Artists. The show is executive produced by George Ruiz and Aaron Massey.